Here to talk to you is Congressman Lee Terry.
Thanks, Jeremy, you are one bored person if you are glued to the TV watching C-SPAN, especially at a time when it was probably blue screen right there. We spent a lot of what we call blue screen, meaning there's nothing to see here. And that was really what the week was like. I do want to talk a little bit about that week because I think it's important to have some perspective here. But I want to start back 7 months ago when a new Congress was sworn in with 87 new people, good, strong conservatives, freedom-loving people that came there to change the culture. What was the culture before that new Congress was sworn in? Well, we had been fighting back, not very successfully, because frankly there weren't a majority of freedom-loving fighters in either house. So we spent 2 years leading up to there where they think that the right way to stimulate an economy and grow jobs is to take every program within government other than defense, and nearly double it in size and money. That was called a stimulus package. Then the next phase that we are fighting against now was let's make sure that we take every facet of the private sector and regulate it as fast and furious as we can, including a regimen called cap and trade to make sure that your electricity rates and price at the pumps would go up dramatically. All because they want to make sure that gasoline gets over $4 and you start conserving, because we aren't doing that enough, and they want to make sure that they impose it upon us. Then we got to Obamacare. So we had gone through 2 years of making sure that individual rights, individual freedoms were under attack, that private sector was under attack, and by the way, we couldn't figure out why businesses weren't hiring. Well, at least some of us could. So what we have been able to do now with the new Congress, first of all, is 3 times in the House of Representatives, we have voted 3 times to repeal Obamacare. 3 times it's sent to the Senate. 3 times they've done nothing. We have exposed the radical regulations on industry. We have tried to repeal many of those, sent those to the Senate. We decided that we were going to show leadership on the economic issues of the day. The Budget Committee, led by Paul Ryan, put together a good document leading us towards a balanced budget, showing the way that we can get our fiscal house in order and still protect seniors. Of course, the liberals demagogued that. If you remember, we were unplugging grandma because Medicare age would have been increased by 1 year. And that came under attack because it reduced spending across the board. So every program had to take a cut under this budget. Then we went into CR. And we I've heard the other night somebody on Fox News said that nothing came of that. It turned out to be a zero. The reality is it's about $80 billion now. CBO rescored it this last week, and it's a significant change of direction. Then we came up to this last few weeks with the debt ceiling. Remember, the deadline was March, then it was May, then it was July, and then we could go as long until August 2nd, and that was the drop dead date. And we kept waiting and waiting for a plan, because we told the president that unless we're cutting spending, that there's no reason to raise the debt limit. We aren't going to do it. That was our condition preceding. And we waited and waited and waited, and nothing ever came. From the Senate, from Harry Reid, from the White House. So we started drafting our own. And a consensus of our caucus, or our conference, that we loved was cut, cap, and trade. Or cap, balance. As many of you know, I've been one of the leaders in propounding the necessity of a balanced budget amendment. And cut, cap, and trade is the right way to go, because if we're cutting, going back to 2006 levels of spending, some may say you should do even further. We can have that discussion, but that's at least was our goal. So we put out that plan. Cap it, or cut back to 2006. Cap it so 10 years out you can't increase the budget. And you have to pass a balanced budget. We passed that, sent it to the Senate. The President issued a veto warning, but Harry Reid killed the bill. And there we sat and waited, and waited, and waited some more. And still we had no leadership. So once again, the House stood up and said, okay, we got to find a way to move this debate forward. And put together alternative plans that were reasonable. They cut, they capped. We still hung on to the balanced budget amendment requirement. And finally, we were able to get the White House back to the table. Of course, that was about 48 hours left. And it was interesting because the President started with, he did have a plan, remember? Clean, just give me 2.4 billion, or trillion, 2.4 trillion, give it to me, no conditions. That was his first. Then he came back and said it has to be a balanced approach. Remember that TV, evening speech? Well, balanced didn't mean cutting and capping and doing a balanced budget amendment. See, in my world, balanced means a balanced budget. Here, his was, we'll do some cuts and we'll do a lot of taxes. Well, we know that when we have an economy that's on life support right now, taking more money out of the private sector to fuel government growth is the wrong policy. Absolutely the wrong policy. So we fought hard on that. Now I'm going to tell you at the end, it was pretty ugly even in our own conference. Because all of us agreed the deal that was finally made at the 11th hour, I thought we should have gone to the 13th hour. Let them sweat. But the reality is on the principles that we set forth, cutting, we make real this year cuts, 13 cuts. We cap going out. And this is not the language that I preferred, but a balanced budget has to be voted on. The language I wanted was it had to be passed. Now, keep in mind the Constitution requires a 2/3 vote. So now what I came here to do today is not only kind of outline where we've gone this year. I know it's not a good rah-rah speech, but it's good to know that we have changed the culture. You have changed the culture. They've gone 100 years basically, and only once or twice in our nation's history has a continuing resolution led to a real cut, has a debt increase led to real cuts and real changes. Now, the problem is we couldn't get all that we wanted. So we have a lot of work to do, folks, before we get our fiscal house in order. I believe the key going forward is not only working for more cuts, but the balanced budget amendment. Each house has to work or has to bring it up for a vote before the end of October. That's the law now. They have to bring it up. And I met a gentleman here from Chicago, good Big Ten country. We need each and every one of us participating in this event today to make sure that we have enough votes in the Senate to pass the balanced budget amendment. I believe that once we can get 2/3 votes in the Senate, because getting 2/3 vote in the House is going to be a lot easier than the Senate. Let's just say it that way. Once we get this done, my belief is that we'll get 2/3 of the state within a year or two. We have already had state senators here saying, pass it, I'll introduce it. And we're getting that across the nation. That is the real long-term structural reforms that are absolutely necessary. Without the constitutional change, the reality is a new Congress can change with a vote. So we need this, and I need you to help us get this by making sure that for the next 6 months, that we are balanced budget focused, that we are calling senators from across the nation, we are getting our friends from other states like Illinois to make sure they're putting pressure on their senators to vote yes on a balanced budget amendment. So we've got a lot of work to do in the next year and a half to make sure that we have the conservative votes, to make sure that we make the right changes for our country. So thank you for being here. Thank you for letting me be part of the process. God bless you, and God bless our great nation.